Hello everyone, hope you're all doing well. So this will be a video on Bel'veth, but before I actually start the video, I want to talk about something which I'm changing with my videos in order to make them more appealing to you guys. So before, I used to do raw stat comparisons. I used to do DPS comparisons, effective HP comparisons, all stuff like that, right? But now I think these things don't really matter as much. So I would calculate effective HP by adding up the armor values times 10, MR values times 10, HP values, shield values, get them all together. Then I'll make that into effective HP. But that doesn't really matter for many reasons. Like, let's say they have a full AP team. If you have a build which has a lot of armor in it, then that build's not going to be good, even though it has a high effective HP. And if your shields are on a very long time, I can't really constitute those shields as being the same effective HP as raw HP, which is always there and usable, right? So, and then healing comes into it, and then weird damage reduction items like, for example, Death Dance, which makes you take more damage potentially when you are going to fight, or take a lot less damage. It's very hard to calculate these things in like damage reduction, how that plays into it. You could say that different move speed or dashes are a form of effective HP, because you're actually getting hit. There's so many different weird input you could put into it to calculate effective HP. For that reason, and it's the same with DPS and damage dealt in like the 15 seconds, for example. So I'll use a test dummy and then see how much damage I could do to it in 15 seconds. But then I have other issues. For example, if I was to use something like what's it called, like Blade of the Rune King, which does more damage when they're high HP, if I'm hitting them for 15 seconds, it doesn't really equate the effectiveness of the item. And if I was to hit them for a small amount of time, then I guess will be more effective. But then there's other aspects of builds which are harder to assess. For example, if I was to give you both effective HP and DPS, like how would you weigh those up? Like how much effective HP outweighs a DPS, or how much DPS outweighs low effective HP? It's very hard to amalgamate all of these together and then come to you with a reasonable response from these premises which I've given you. Because of that, what I'm going to start doing is just giving you the build. I'll let you try the build, you guys tell me what you think, and then from your responses I'll change it, update it, whatever it might be. I'm going to maybe make like a site or something giving you all the builds which I think are the most optimal, because there's been a lot of changes which I have developing, stuff like that, changing out new builds with new items which come out, changes to items, and it would be a bit difficult for me to make videos on every single champion. So I might just make some sort of page or something, or I'll just update people on the newest builds which I think are the best on different champions. But yeah, that's pretty much that. And another thing before we get into it, I'm going to, instead of just showing you build order, I'm also going to show you build importance. So let's say you really don't like an item. If the item's not very important, I'll put it, so there'll be different rankings, you'll see them. I'll put it down at the bottom, and then you guys can tell me what you think about the build and what you think should change, whether you think another a low importance item should be switched out for something else, or whatever it might be. So yeah, preface out the way, let's get into Bel'veth. So the build which I'm gonna tell you lot to go will be Divine Sunderer, Phantom Dancer, Navori, Qucikblades, Black Cleaver, Titanic, Hydra, and Hullbreaker. So I'm gonna tell you why each one of these items are really, really good on Bel'veth, and then I'm gonna go into the runes after that. So Divine Sunderer is so good because of how it interacts with both Q and E. So how Bel'veth works is that each time she casts an ability, she gets attack speed on her next two auto attacks. So inbuilt into her kit is a sort of pseudo Sheen passive, but with attack speed. Not only this, but Bel'veth's Q is also able to apply on hit effects, meaning that now pretty much every time you Q, you're able to heal yourself for a fair amount of HP. Also, when it comes to your E applies on hit effects, meaning you're able to apply the healing of both Q and E without having to auto attack. Well, it's sort of an auto attack, it depends how you can. It's your E, right? Not to mention a fair amount of Bel'veth's damage comes from her W, which is an AP ability, meaning that the passive of Sunderer, which gives you Magic Pen, comes in handy here. So Sunderer generally pretty good on Bel'veth. I don't understand if you want to go Triforce instead. Triforce gives you a bit more damage but less healing, and Sunderer gives you a bit less damage but more healing. But the damage isn't really too big of a difference because of Sunderer's passive and how that passive amplifies your W. So Phantom Dancer and Navori. Okay, so I've spoken about this combination many times before on the channel, but I will explain this combination one more time here. And then I'll go into why this works so well with Bel'veth. So Phantom Dancer, when fully stacked, is able to give you 55% attack speed. When you combine this with Navori's first passive, which gives you CDR depending on how much you auto, it makes these two items the strongest item combination in the game at the moment. And it's not really close. No item's really close to it. The best I would say would be a high base AD champion going Triforce and Sterax. That's probably the closest, but even that's not really in the same league. So now the reason why this works so well with Bel'veth is because of Bel'veth's attack speed passive, which means the later she gets into the game, the more attack speed she gets, and she can apply, and she gets this attack speed at a higher rate than pretty much any other champion in the game. Not only that, but Bel'veth's E is able to apply on hit effects and on attack effects, which is what Navori's passive is. It's an on attack effect. Even though it's at a lower percentage, it doesn't really matter because of the sheer amount of auto attacks which she's able to do during her W, which means at full build you're able to W, E, then W again instantly. It's W, E, W, and then I think it's about a 3 second, 4 second long cooldown for your E again, and then you can do it again, which is another big thing. Bel'veth is mainly should be played around her, I think it's her E. It should mainly be played around her E, because E gives her Omnivamp or healing, and it gives her DR, and with this build you're able to get your E down to an extremely low cooldown. I think in a game, depending on how much attack speed you can get it down to, in a reasonable game, let's say the max we're going is about 45 minutes, you can probably get your E down to about 3 seconds, 3 second E, which is insane. Which means, for example, your E, when you're using it, it's active, so you can't get it on cooldown while you're actually using it, but you could W, E, W, that W takes off about 0.75 seconds, then you wait around 2 more seconds, and then you're able to potentially W. I haven't tested the, I think you can W, E, W, wait a few seconds, W, E, W. You can do that continually. So they're continually either CC'd or you're continually healing and extremely immune to damage, and you're dashing around at the same time. So you're extremely hard to kill late game. It makes you an insane late game carry, because how are they going to kill you? 70% DR, CC, and 4 dashes. How they going to, I don't know. You know, that's why the build's so good. This is also why Navori is better than Shojin. Shojin doesn't work on CC abilities like Bel'veth is W. So yeah, so this is why Navori is better than Shojin. Generally, it's like every single situation. I would suggest never going Shojin unless your champion actually never auto attacks, which is very rare. So yeah, Shojin is just Navori but worse. Black Cleaver and Titanic. So this combination is very interesting. So the reason behind Black Cleaver is fairly simple. You're able to instantly stack it on your E proc. This works in tandem with Titanic Hydra because you're only able to target one champion during your E. Titanic allows you to apply the Black Cleaver armor reduction onto multiple different targets if they're standing close enough to each other. So pretty much you E, and then that E applies Black Cleaver extremely quickly, and then your Titanic is able to apply that Black Cleaver stack onto loads of different enemies. It also means you have an extremely good wave clear, which will come into effect when we talk about the next item, Hullbreaker. Hullbreaker is the last item in this build, which I would suggest you going. Now I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here because I think the item is extremely good, so just bear with me here. So this item is amazing. It's always been amazing and probably always will be amazing unless they nerf it again, but people don't seem to remember why it's actually so good. So I'll read out a bit of the item stats and its passive here. So pretty much what Hullbreaker does is it gives you 50 attack damage, which is pretty good, and 400 HP. Very good again. It's similar to Black Cleaver. I think it's built out of very similar items. Passive of, or the unique passive of this item is that when no allied champions are nearby, you gain 75 armor and magic resist. and when no allies are nearby you or your minions gain 225 armor and magic resist, along with 200% bonus damage against structures. This item gives you 75 bonus MR and armor. No other item does that, and it's not even close. Well, sort of close, 15 off. But it's insane how much effective HP you're able to get from this item. It's absolutely absurd. So most people think this item is only good on split pushers, and I thought that as well until I actually looked into the gold efficiency of the item. So even if you are in a team fight, the item is still 116% gold efficient, which is insane. And when you are alone, the item is 218% gold efficient when at max rank, making it the most gold efficient item in the game, which is made out of components, which is absurd. So Bel'veth, in her Mother Queen form, is able to get her Voidlings, which, although aren't affected by Hullbreaker, they effectively give you a huge minion wave, which are able to protect the Hullbreaker minions, even though they're already getting protected, which means you're going to be doing even more damage to structures, because your minions are going to take even longer to kill, because they have to kill the Voidlings before they kill the actual minions which are doing the brunt of the damage, which means you're able to get multiple towers when you split push, because Bel'veth is a better split pusher than she's a team fighter in my opinion, but she's good at both, so yeah. So the last thing I'll talk about is this build does not require you to go boots. If you go this build, you don't need boots. You don't need boots on Bel'veth if you're going Phantom Dancer. So the champion has a lot of dashes. She's able to get increased movement speed. In her Mother Queen form, she doesn't really need boots, and considering you're a scaling champion, you're going to aim to sell those boots at some point anyway, especially if you're in a lower elo bracket where games are a lot longer. If you really need boots, I would suggest getting magical footwear and then selling those boots later on into the game. Last point I'm going to make here is on runes. You pretty much always want to go Conqueror because she's able to stack Conqueror so quickly. I do see Grasp being an option, but again, you're gonna have to, that's more for lane Bel'veth, and even that's a bit questionable, but I don't mind Grasp generally. I'll say Lethal Tempo is also an option, but it has weird interactions with your scaling, so I would say just Conqueror. Pretty much always go Conqueror. Conqueror is the most ideal build. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to talk about today. Thank you a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.